Now, the presidency says the absence of President Tinubu and Vice President Kashim Shettima in the country does not create any leadership vacuum. And while Tinubu departed for the country on October 2nd, 2024 for a 2-week working leave, Shettima left Abuja on Wednesday for Sweden on a 2-day visit to represent Nigeria in bilateral engagements with the Scandinavian nation. In a statement on Wednesday, the special advisor to the president on information and strategy, Bayo Onanuga, said the two leaders are fully engaged with the nation's affairs, even while they are away. Onanuga also noted that all state organs are functioning as usual. And now joining us on the news is Elvis Asia, a legal practitioner. Thank you so much, Elvis, for joining us, and good afternoon.
Thank you for having me on the program, the news.
An absolute pleasure. Now, Elvis, can you elaborate on how the Constitution allows for the president and the vice president to be absent simultaneously without causing a leadership crisis? Are there any precedents that support this? I mean, of course, we have the Senate president, so is that allowed, basically?
Constitutionally, the issue is not really the absence of the president and the vice president simultaneously. There's no constitutional provision that bars both of them from traveling at the same time. What I know is leadership vacuum is a question of, for me, it's not really a question about the vice president traveling at the same time. It's about whether or not the president was right to have gone on vacation without, transferring power to the vice president in line with Section 145 of the Constitution, which makes it mandatory that whenever he's going on another vacation, is obligated to inform the National Assembly, and by virtue of that, the vice president becomes the acting president. In this particular instance, this president didn't do that, like we have seen in the past with other presidents, Yar'Adua, Buhari, and all that. And that is where the problem is. Unfortunately, for you to now say there's a vacuum, you also have to look at Section 145, subsection 2, which now provides that, which particularly gives the president 21-day window to do that transmission. So if it is not done within that 21 days, and then the Senate can hold a meeting to appoint the vice president as acting president. But unfortunately, I think he said it's going on a 2 weeks vacation, which is short of the 21 days window. So the National Assembly will not be able to declare the vice president as acting. And so the point I'm trying to make is that, the mere fact that two of them travel at the same time is not really, it doesn't create a vacuum. I mean, traveling on a working visit doesn't mean that you have to transfer power. The Constitution only requires you to transfer power when you are going on vacation or when you become incapable of performing the functions of the office, which is not the case here. So I can't really say constitutionally that there is a vacuum. But of course, substantively, there is a vacuum in the sense that we can't really say for sure who's the acting president at the moment. The president shouldn't be able to be president while he's on vacation by virtue of the relevant provisions of the Constitution. But fortunately, we're having a situation where the president does not always want to give power. And substantively, like I said, even in terms of governance, in terms of presence of the president, we haven't really felt the presence of the president, even when he's here. So constitutionally, there may be no vacuum, but substantively, there has always been.
So I think that's the underlying issue, because a lot of people do not necessarily have a problem with the president and the vice president traveling out, because like you rightly said, there could be two events happening in two different places simultaneously. And that's why we have a president and a vice and a Senate. But the fact that there is that vacuum, not in the sense of physical absence now, but in the sense of lack of communication and total disconnect from what is actually happening in the country. It feels as though, when the strikes are going on, when the protests are going on, it's just so convenient for the people in governance, our leaders who are supposed to focus more on those who are being governed, to just travel. So how does this public perception of a leadership vacuum and not the physical vacuum now impact the trust in government, especially when the president and Vice President seem to be absent, both physically and emotionally?
What you have described is really goes to the root of our democracy. The reason why the people in government, president in this case and vice president, don't seem to really care about the feelings, the yearnings and aspirations of the people on the street who are feeling the pangs of the current economic policies of the government are facing is simply because, the people at the head do not believe that they need the people to stay in power. They believe that they can buy their way, like they've done in many places. We have seen, situations that do in other places. And so they don't really give the people the pride of place that they should enjoy. They ordinarily, even when you are traveling, there should be proper communication with the people on the basis of those travels, the kind of dividends are to bring to the people. If you look at other governments across the world, you see they have a daily press briefing on what is going on with government. And then even beyond these travels, we know that even when they are here, we don't feel the impact of governance. We don't feel the impact of the president. A president ought to be able to move around the countries, identify with the people, explain policies and visions and all of that to the people. But we don't get to see that. And so the people have come to expect, in the last few years with Yar'Adua, with Buhari, and currently with Tinubu, that their president will not be there, which is a tragedy, which is very sad for our democracy. A president ought to be on top of the game. You must be the one communicating with the people on these issues, even though you have other, you have special advisors, you have Minister of Information, all of that. And it's really has endangered the trust that the people have in governance. And when the people do not trust government, the danger is that you are not able to really make the necessary change that you want to make, because it's fixing a problem. It's a two-way traffic. The government has the policies. The people must be able to buy into those policies, and the only way the people can buy into those policies so that the thing can work effectively is when there's effective communication, when the people feel the presence of their leaders. But unfortunately, we don't feel it at the moment. And so there's practically no trust in what government does on a daily basis. And that is why we are having serious issues with nationalism, serious issue with patriotism, and serious issues with putting Nigeria first in all we do. And it's very sad that we do not have leaders who understand this simple fact.
Okay, I think that another major thing which you have extensively talked about is the lack of communication. And I think that we have downplayed the essence of it so much so that people or the government does not understand how far communication can go when it comes to governing the people. So what role does effective communication play in mitigating public concerns? Because I'm led to believe that a lot of these protests and strikes may not happen if there is effective communication, if the people feel that the government is feeling the pulse of the nation. So how important is communication in governance?
Effective communication is everything in governance, particularly in a democracy, where you have, just about how many people voted to put the current president in power. So you have millions of Nigerians who are not even involved in the voting and all of that. So you need to have an effective communication to mobilize the people to see the vision you say you are seeing, and then so that they can assist you. You cannot fix Nigeria by simply sitting down and saying that subsidy is gone, parallel exchange rate is gone, and all of that. Those kind of comments and statements that pulls Nigerians down, that shows complete disregard for the Nigerian people, will not help us in fixing Nigeria's intractable problems. The only way you can fix the problem is to properly encourage the people through effective communication. And in the national relation agencies, those days used to be an effective tool of communication with billboards and signs, with jingles on television and radio. We don't get to see any of that these days. What we see them do now is to defend the government. That shouldn't be the case. So if you, in the absence of an effective communication strategy for a government anywhere in the world, that government is likely not going to succeed. There are instances where you might even be doing the right things and the people will think you're not doing anything. So you must be able to communicate effectively. And I tie it, this lack of communication, like I said earlier, I tie it to the way and manner the people in government see the people. They see the people as nothing. You can go back to them, in another 4 years, buy some votes here and there, do political somersaults here and there, and then you come back to power. And so because of that, they've forgotten the primary responsibility of government, which is basically to get the people to solve their problem. Leadership is not about fixing roads, about subsidy or whatever it is. It's about galvanizing the people. It's about providing leadership to people to solving their own problems. And in the absence of communication, effective communication at that, you won't be able to achieve that. And you have all these divisions. You go on social media now and see the division that we have across the country. The mutual suspicion amongst ethnic groups. And all of these are becoming a laboratories to solving our problems. And so we have to find a way to encourage government, however you have gotten to power, try to make sure that you have an effective communication strategy that would galvanize the people towards solving their problems so that we can have the country that we truly deserve as a nation.
All right, legal practitioner Elvis Asia, thank you so much for joining us on the news and sharing your thoughts.
Thank you for having me.
An absolute pleasure. You're still live with us on the news. We'll go on a short break now, and when we come back, we'll take a look at more stories. Stay with us.